Hello, everyone. My name is Esther Lee, co-founder of the Chinese American Heritage Foundation. CAHF promotes the recognition, appreciation, and celebration of historical contribution made to the United States by citizens of Chinese heritage. Welcome to Day 14 of our 31 webinars celebrating AAPI Heritage Month. Today, we'll be screening DragonMasters. It is the untold story of the Chinese dragon in America. When this symbol of good fortune and benevolence first arrived, it found communities in trouble and was soon employed by the handlers to battle prejudice, violence, and exclusion. This film will be 1 hour and followed by 20 minutes panel discussion and 10 minutes Q&A. Before the film starts, I would like to introduce our moderator. His name is David Lei. He is our CAHF Senior Advisor and the Board Chair of the Chinese Performing Arts Foundation in San Francisco. Our two outstanding panelists, one is the DragonMaster Director and Writer, Rick Zach. He is an award-winning creative director and Professor Emeritus at the Alberta University of the Arts. Rick has practiced and researched Chinese dragon dancing in New York and its related tradition with Sifu Jian Ming Wu for over 45 years. He has taught and coached a dragon team in Calgary and in New York for over 3 decades. The other panelist is DragonMaster co-director Jun Ren. He is a creative and film director between New York City and Shanghai. He has an undergraduate degree in design and a master's degree in film directing from School of Visual Arts in New York. His mission is to build a bridge between progressive East and the West media creatives and connect next-gen audience of all cultures. Let us start the film right now.
I came from China in 1981 to come to live with a master Chinese rule. As I was getting off the subway, I got a hold up, and the 2 guys robbed my ring. And I was like so shook up, I was crying to master. Was like I got robbed, and the master asked me, "Is like who?" It's like, how did it happen? I say, as I was getting off the subway, and then the guy just choked my neck, and then the other guy took my ring, and they just ran off. And then the other guy, the third guy, came to offer help, and he said, "Stay here. I'm gonna catch them. I'm gonna beat the crap out of them." But then later I figured, they might be together. Later I found out actually, gangs in Chinatown, they would recruit teenagers like me. When I came here, I was a bit of shocked, culture-wise. There is a big difference, cultural belief, and also way of living between Asian culture and American culture. After I arrived here, I see all kinds of ethnic group people, and as I remember when I was landed in JFK, and I was like totally different world. It's like on another planet. And back then, when I met him, he was in the late 60s. The second day, I see a lot of Master Wu's students came, and they all came from different ethnic background. And he basically welcomed every ethnic group of people, and it was like really interesting. As a young kid, I was 15 years old at the time, and I found he was teaching martial arts, Shaolin martial arts. I always wanted to study. It's the inside of me. It's like I have some kind of passion for martial arts. And I asked him, say, could you please teach me? And he said, no. I said, why? He said, you came here, your responsibility was to study in school, not martial arts. There was about a year later, the two guys robbed my ring. I told Master Wu, I have to learn martial arts. I need to, get myself stronger, at least be able to defend myself. At that time, 1981, in the 80s, early 80s, in Brooklyn is kind of not as safe as as today. He realized, it's a grave situation, and he said, you know what? Write a letter to your parents. As long as they say you can learn, I will teach you. So that's how I started learning martial arts. I was like very happy. It's like finally I will be able to learn from the the true master. So that's how I got involved with learning while I was living with Master Wu for the next 10 years.
Back in the 60s, this was mostly Hispanic community, and a lot of poverty. And once the 70s came and the 80s came, this was a war zone. I remember all my friends out around here, either they were on drugs, selling drugs, or into fights. Physically see people dying, killing each other for whatever reasons, and mostly it was because of drugs. And when the 80s came back and you had the crack epidemic, is when this really got bad. So then you had rival gangs, and then you had people hooked up on drugs, and you had a lot of young people, no jobs, nowhere to go but to turn to the streets. This whole little area here, that's all it was. Mostly Hispanics and blacks. And there was a lot of tension. And most of the gangs that were in this area, from the Dirty Ones to the Latin Kings, which came much later on, but to the Bartlett Boys, the Bowery Boys, and they will fight each other. But again, it was all dealing with the sadness of drugs and the influence of drugs in this community.
Back then, the 70s, oh my God, every other day there's a shooting, homicide. Oh, the ones that are really bad are the shootings in the movie theater. They're the classic ones. I'll be sitting there. I witnessed at least 3 of those. I'm sitting in the movie theater, I hear bang, 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 bang. Everybody's screaming, ah! And they're all running out of the theater, and then you see people coming, gangsters coming out with blood on their head and all kinds of stuff. And the next day I read newspaper, 2 got killed. They prey on a lot of poor kids that don't know any better, like innocent kids, and they force them to do things, try to get them to join the gangs. Usually they try to recruit most of them, underage, under 17, under 16, so that when they commit the crime, they'll be considered juvenile criminal, and they don't have to really sit in jail for too long. One of the ways that they force you to join the gangs, if they see you're capable, is that they beat you up. They scare you.
There is a lot of crime going on. There's a lot of gangs going on, especially in Chinatown. and he warned me about it. I had no clue. When Master Wu, he decided to open the Shaolin Association here, and the name was Honan Shaolin Golden Dragon Team. And besides Honan Shaolin Associations deal with the martial arts aspect, and the Dragon Team side, it's the celebration of Chinese culture through the dragon dancing, and carries on the tradition that he had learned in Shanghai when he was in Shaolin martial arts plus the Dragon Team.
I would pass down the streets here and I would see the sticks flying. I was always wondering, something's going on up there. I want to learn how to protect myself. I just thought it was just martial arts. I had no idea about what a dragon was. Puff the Maverick Dragon was the only thing I ever heard about a dragon.
I'd never seen anything like this. Even when the parades and stuff in Chinatown before, I've never gone in Chinatown. I've never seen any part of that culture.
Well, the first time I saw the dragon dance, I was a little amazed by it, and also curious, like, what does this have to do with martial arts? You know, what's the whole dragon dance thing? You know, where's the connection? You know, what am I going to learn from dragon dancing? You know, I want to learn how to fight.
So as I'm coming out the building, it's the first time I saw it. And you got to admit, it's kind of weird. You go, what the heck? I live in this place for about 5 years now, and all of a sudden I see this thing I've never seen before. But I figured, okay, I kind of took it in, as you would if you first saw a dragon, especially in Williamsburg.
We gon' pick you and false, you be the false. Because on this side of the fence be a team full of true players. And me, I be the top swatter. The sun is out, the heat is on, and I'm only gon' make it hotter. Hope you got a lot of water in your squirt bottles. It help wash down all the sand that we about to make it.
So when I came here, I saw the dragon. I was like, wow, what is this creature? It's like it was long. It's like interesting. So I was asking Master Wu a lot of questions, and he was trying to explain to me it's just traditional Chinese culture. I think he was kind of a little surprised. I never saw dragon dancing in my life. I heard about it from my grandmother. That's same age as my grand aunt, Mrs. Wu. In their generation, they saw. So dragon dance was popular back then. So all around the country basically.
There's a lot of writing in China from the Han times on about the dragon, and just in everyday conversation, there's at least 700 different uses of the word dragon in everyday speech. Today with big data, I probably can ask a friend with access to this 600 million Chinese phrases and get you 10,000 phrases where the word dragon is used, incorporated into that. But it's everywhere in Chinese art, conversation, literature. It's pervasive.
作为海外华人，我觉得是一个共同的一种印记吧。我觉得这个印记是很强烈的。怎么讲呢？我觉得中国人尝了一个中国人的胃。我觉得就我们到哪里都会想要吃点热的东西啊，要吃中国食物，然后觉得才能够就是它有家的感觉。我觉得龙也是，看到龙就会有一种族群的那种意识。
I moved here with my mother in about the early 70s. We moved to the 10th floor. She had a long struggle for herself, and having a child and raised me by herself, she felt this was one of the best places to be. When it came to Master Wu, I think he was gravitated for the same reason. This is a place that's easy to get to Chinatown. The prices there were going up, and here in 1970, it was very cheap. The neighborhood itself would be considered the ghetto. My grades started to slip, and she got word that I was hanging out with very, shall we say, unsavory characters. I was drifting. I could have gone either way. Because it was in the ghetto, it was easy for me to have gone astray. There were those of us who found him, who lived in this area. We found a person that could help stabilize us, give us an anchor of, stability that I don't think existed anywhere else.
I met Master Wu when I was 13, prior to going to high school. I was in 7th or 8th grade. I'm from the local neighborhood. I lived 2 blocks away in a building, 136 Warm Street. I didn't have any grandparents. My grandparents lived in Puerto Rico. My father left when I was 2. And I had heard a lot about Master Wu. People spoke about this old Chinese man, an old school Chinese man with old traditional ways, who would, get up at 4 a.m. and practice in the park, and also who practiced some dragon dancing. And to be honest, I was very much intimidated by him. In the very beginning, it was hard for me to understand him. I thought that he was mean, but as I grew, I recognized that I didn't know a kinder, more loving human being, and I would speak English the way he would speak. And we just made a real connection.
Sifu was a light to many young men. If it wasn't for Master Wu, most of the young guys that were here either would have wound up on drugs, would have wound up in a bad situation. Sifu gave us a structure to come to a place where it's like you could practice, you had values, you had rules.
I know for sure if I would have not came here and found Master Wu, especially in a young age, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, mentally, financially, everything. Just, I would have definitely gotten into trouble, if not arrested, who knows, God forbid, killed, I know plenty of friends, like I said, growing up with that, that didn't have an opportunity like this to find this place, and they haven't done so well, For that, I'm fortunate.
Master, he was born in China, in the city of Fenghua, Zhejiang province. Actually, it's a neighboring state to the city of Shanghai in early 1900s. He was born in a family, was fairly well off. His father was also a martial artist. He passed the exam, and he was supposed to work for the government, for the last emperor. Unfortunately, a few months after he was hired in a military position, the Qing dynasty collapsed, as his father was starting into drinking and gambling, lost everything, basically all the home gone. And his mother had no choice, couldn't afford it at home, and he left the home, went to live with his uncle in Shanghai, and that's when he was 9 years old. And then I went through went through a lot of hardships actually in Shanghai. 9 years old, what can you do? And eventually he met his master when he was 14 years old.
I'm a very poor person. My master picked me up on the street. I had no money to run it. He said, don't worry about it.
Where he studied martial arts, there was a dragon there also. Part of the Shaolin Association. The Honan Shaolin Association in Shanghai was founded by Master Jian Jingsan. They came from Honan province in China. Basically, their kung fu was taught by a monk from Shaolin Temple, so that's why it's called, our school name is called Honan Shaolin.
So I was one of the earliest students. I think there's another one, but I never met him. When he was teaching initially, he's very, very, very strict. He's from the old school. We usually goes up to practice martial arts every morning about 5 o'clock.
But what's going on? I just knew at 6 o'clock in the morning we had to get the dragon together. We had to put the skin together, and here we went. We would go outside and do dragon practice, and it was always early in the morning. It's like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. It could be freezing, it could be snow, and they would all go outside. And I'm like, damn, what are we doing here at 6? We could be home sleeping.
The park where my house is situated, where a building is situated, where Master Wu is situated, believe it or not, the park does not have that much crime. So the park is relatively safe, believe it or not. And that's why we dragon dance there.
Okay, there were guys who didn't know that I practiced, and I'm hanging out in the park, and they're like, yo, man, you ever see those guys with the dragon? And I'm listening to this conversation, and I'm like, okay, yeah. Master Wu is known throughout this neighborhood in Williamsburg. To be honest with you, I think even though we've never had one, I'm pretty sure the Hasidic Jews know of us because we're practicing the dragon here. They've seen us. They've never asked, but I'm pretty sure they've looked and said, okay, yeah, that's cool. People would ask me because I lived here. They would see me with the dragon. Then they'd see me walking by myself. That's when they would ask me, where is that? Who is that man? Where is it from? They would ask me all these questions. The park was that you could walk in straight up to where the old man and the students were dragon dancing, right? The first basketball court over here. They were there, and I was kind of intimidated by him, even though I hadn't met him. So I just stood there for a moment, I guess now that I think about it, in fear. He asked me, how old am I? I said 17. But I'm still watching these guys, what they're doing, how they're breaking down the dragon, because I realize, joining this school, I'm going to have to do this. So I look around, I see what they're doing. I'm looking at the weapons going, yo, I'm going to get to play with that one and this one, but I'm also psyched, but I'm also kind of leery because, how can I put it? There's a little interpretation, a little feeling out process. And let me tell you, when it comes to a Kung Fu master and a feeling out process, that can be kind of scary.
But going into Chinatown and doing the events, and which we do different ones, we did it in Chinatown, Queens, we've done them all over. An amazing feeling just getting to Chinatown and seeing all the celebration. To me, I'd never been to any Chinatown celebration. That was the very first for me, and not even me going into Chinatown. I was born and raised here, and this is all I knew. When the dragon came about, that's when it all comes together. When I went to Chinatown as a teenager, and we're all together, and we're dancing around Canal Street, it was really, really an amazing feeling.
So when you come out with the dragon, you are the top. I don't know if you noticed that when the dragon spins around, it's always on top. Why do you think it's on a stick? And why do you think the other animals are all like on legs, no stick? Because they always got to be lower than the dragon.
The dragon meant more than just us dancing. You saw all of us in different colors and working together, which I think shows a lot. Because it means that different diversities can come together and do one solid thing and make it beautiful.
I didn't grow up in a ghetto kind of community like most of my brothers did. I grew up in a middle-class suburb out of Boston. So I became brothers with people I would never have met, both Chinese and basically Chinese, Hispanic, and African-American. And I was accepted.
A lot of people tell me this, you look cheap, Chinese here. He's not Chinese. Coming to China, he's Indian.
This togetherness, black, Chinese, Hispanic, white, you know, it was a safe haven where we could all look at each other and say, oh, wow, we're all brothers. So then you go back to the community and you have a sense when you're walking down the street, I got other guys in my life that are like brothers, are like friends. It was exciting. Even though I felt I was in a Vietnam War with the firecrackers and the incidents, you came back exhausted with this joy that we did this beautiful dance. We went around, we made people happy. I think for a lot of us, it lit up a light inside you. Seeing this for the first time, it was magical.
In China, there's a lot of events actually all year round, and you know, for each event, people would go out, celebrate, gathering for happy events, and they would often involve the dragon dancing.
The dragon dance, it requires a lot of people, and any number of different groups could perform the dragon dance. It could be done by the village. In the later imperial period in China, the dragon dance was performed often by martial artists, and this probably was simply because of the fact that running around for a lengthy period of time required people who were physically skilled and developed enough to be able to handle the demands of doing the dance. Now, the dragon dance that are like the Shaolin Golden Dragon dance is very ritualized dance. And because of that, it takes a long time for people to learn the ritual steps involved. The dragon has many patterns that it has to go through in doing the dance. And so therefore, it's not something where someone can just, pick up part of the dragon and run through it. Since the beginning of the dragon as a symbol for the Chinese is lost in prehistory, it's very difficult for us to trace how this symbol became ubiquitous within the culture. As far as we know, the beginnings of the dragon as a symbol in Chinese culture seem to spread at a very early period, probably more than 4,000 years ago. So again, very difficult to trace how it became such a ubiquitous symbol within the culture. The version that we have now with sort of the stag horns and the oxen ears and camel-like face is a development from about 2,000 years ago. Now, there are a number of theories on the origin of the image of the dragon. For example, some people think dinosaur bones were seen, and so people developed the idea of the dragon from that. Some people think it was a totem-like animal, and different parts of the dragon represented different tribes of the Chinese when they were first coming together. But none of these theories have been proven. In terms of the dragon dance, we're on much more solid historical ground. The dragon dance seems to be an act associated with trying to bring rain. So the water for that type of agricultural society is extremely important. And so the dragon itself develops as not only the keeper of the water, but the keeper of wealth and prosperity. From at least the Tang Dynasty, The dragon in China has been affiliated with spiritual wisdom and spiritual power, and this association takes on more and more levels of meaning as we progress through the dynasties.
Dragon also has to do with the first emperor in China. That's why all the emperors along Chinese history, they identify themselves as the descendants of the dragon. During the imperial period, nobody can wear the dragon. If you wear the dragon, you're in big trouble.
Only the emperor could wear robes that had the 5-clawed golden dragon and his immediate family, and only things sanctioned by the emperor were permitted to be associated with that particular image of a dragon.
It's the most powerful dragon of all dragons, of all different type of dragons.
The Cantonese dragon and the Cantonese lion came from the opera school. It has these pom-pom balls. Same with the lions, Chinese lions. It's not found in any other lions and dragons in China. The painting, the concepts, what the dragon represent. A lot of these came from opera literature, opera traditions, opera colors, symbolism. So definitely for the Cantonese. Then the dragon we see in America are the bigger parade dragons. They're not performance dragons. We don't see too many performance dragons. The performance dragon is normally a smaller body, much smaller body. And then you can really fling it and move it around. And there's set movements, a lot of them based on the dragon dance coming out of Sichuan. Even today, you find the most varied and numerous kinds of dragon out of Sichuan of all of China. There's also a lot of obfuscation because people take part of it and they add it, incorporate it into what they do and the ceremonies, but not fully understand. Then we have all these Taoism and Buddhism rituals that get blended in. So there's a lot of borrowing from other things that ends up there, and a lot of local religion, local rituals.
There are a number of local variations on the dragon. Some villages put lamps inside the body of the dragon and parade it during the evening, and so the whole dragon lights up. Perhaps the most spectacular of the fire dragons is the one at Putsai village, where they've affixed quite a number of sparklers to the outside of the body and parade this through in the evening. And this spectacular dragon dance that they do, but it actually started out in the 18th century as a way of combating a drought.
我们整个中国，我们都是龙的传人嘛啊，龙是吉祥的啊，所以我刚才也说，我们这个龙就表现这个吉祥，放进吉祥啊，就是这个意义的。
The dragon represents good luck and prosperities, health, longevities. That's why when we go to dragon dance in Chinatown, people go crazy. ranging from the older elders, to the children. They would like to physically touch the dragon, and they would touch the dragon head, and then they would touch their head. Feel like they be transferring the good energy from the dragon to themselves.
You can't destroy the dragon. I mean, the dragon, so that is our symbol, Throughout history, even in Chinese history, no matter what part of dynasties you are, the dragon is the symbol of the highest order.
龙它不一定是一种它具体的一种符号，我觉得它不是这种符号，它不是说是非得要我们想到这种龙的样子，我觉得龙它是看不见的，是吧？我觉得它是一种精神，这种精神，然后最近呢，在中国城道业 Street 刚做了一个公共艺术作品，叫《龙与花之歌》。道业 Street 其实是纽约中国城最古老也最有名的一条街了，它是全美就是死人最多的一条，犯罪率最高的一条街啊，曾经是。但是它也在变化，它其实一直不是这样子的，然后在好莱坞影片里面，就是一直是它是一个负面的一种形象出现，然后一直改变不了它的一个刻板的印象。怎么讲呢？我觉得爱与和平其实是中国城的一个精神。然后我是觉得这条街和蜿蜒曲折，特别像是一条龙，就是很简单，就是我要画一张肖像，是为这条街，画一张肖像，然后我作为一个做当代艺术的艺术家，用我的方式去演绎龙，然后它就会呈现出一个更开放的，然后一个另外的一个形态，然后让大家感受到完全不一样的一种龙的一种精神，然后我是觉得通过这次的作品，它是一条鲜亮的一条龙的一种样子，然后大家就自然而然就会对它改变对它刻板的印象，因为这条龙它卧在地上，就是我把它给勾勒出来了，然后它显现在纽约。纽约，然后大家看到它的样子了，所以它是很美丽的。然后大家站在这条街上的时候，就像你说的，站在龙背上，其实它就是站在街上。有人会拉着我说：“哦，我这里看到了龙的头在这里，我看到龙的眼睛在这里，我看到龙的鳞片，还有龙的就是胡须是在这个部位。”然后我也是后来再去看我的作品，发现。它是有一些形态，它就是散落在这幅画里面，这个就很有意思。他们是从来没有见有人画龙是画成这样的一种形态，然后我就会去看，大家怎么跟这个作品之间怎样互动，然后我会通过网上收集大家就拍照的内容，然后转到自己的账号上。然后你会发现，有人会在上面做瑜伽，有人会带自己心爱的娃娃，然后一起逛街，还有带自己的小动物，就自己的宠物来逛街，然后你会发现一张照片，这个小狗在这条街上笑得那么可爱，然后我觉得特别开心。我觉得不光是就不分年龄，甚至连不分物种，大家都很喜欢这条街。 其实公共艺术作品它最大的意义在于它跟公众之间的互动，然后你会发现很多的年轻人在这条街上，还有好多的孩子，在这条街上玩耍，然后我觉得它的未来是值得期待的，所以说它才，我觉得它会更重要。我觉得《龙与花之歌》其实它就是一个最好的一个就主题。所以整个作品的名字叫《龙与花之歌》，里面是充满着爱与和平，就是对应着这个华人移民历史的这个艰辛和历史的艰辛的历史这样的一个概念。
There was like 1974 was the first dragon in New York City. I mean, in New York, basically. I'm not sure if in other, like San Francisco, they had or not, but we did not hear. But there was a first dragon in the East Coast.
Now, you see a lot of other Kung Fu styles. They got the lion, they got the unicorn, but the dragon, you don't see that much. Because usually a dragon exists in the northern section of all the martial arts. Now, again, at the time, he was the only dragon that ever came to Chinatown. Because every time when a festival occurs during Chinese New Year, Independence Day, they always hire him. There was no other dragon, never. For the longest time, it's always him. And the reason why I know, because I'm in a parade with him. I don't see a dragon. I see tons of lions, see a few unicorns, never a dragon. It's always his dragon.
1976 American Bicentennial, July 4th celebration. The Dragon Dance was there. In 1980, when the American Museum of Natural History opened the Asian Hall, Master Wu was there with the dragon to dance, sharing it with the people there. And in 1981, when Astor Hall was opened in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, once again the Dragon Dance was there, right? Not just to help the Chinese community, but to highlight the events of the Chinese through the dragon. So we were asked to do a dragon dance for background on the Hell on Wheels series. This is in the 1800s, right, when the railway was being built. They utilized a lot of Chinese workers on the railway. The dragon that they actually built, or they had like on the set, was actually an imperial golden dragon. The ironical part was we didn't think there was a Chinese dragon in North America during that time, right? Circa 1850 or whatever. And I guess there was.
I was born in Portland, Oregon, and I was brought back here when I was 2 years old by my mother and father. My mother actually was born here in Marysville. My father was born in Canton, China. He came over here to take over his father's restaurant. That was back in the 30s, and so I've been here for 70 years. West Coast has always had a dragon since the 1800s. Been across the country, been to New York twice. The earliest date that we can nail down is 1911. It was a 4th of July celebration in New York.
Well, we don't have the exact date. We think it's 1890. I have yet to go to the Department of Commerce to look up their import records. We'll probably find it as to when it was imported. It was probably imported through San Francisco. But the best we have is 1890, because by 1893 it was already in Chicago.
Mulan was more than likely the very first prairie dragon that came to the United States. Mu himself was a symbol of the emperors.
They were also in Seattle with this dragon. They came to San Francisco. That dragon was everywhere and seems to be very organized. And I'm not quite sure which organization did it, whether it was the temple. It must have been around the temple that they did this. Oftentimes these kinds of events were organized with the same groups that organized the temples.
In Marysville, the devotions, the respect they pay to the dragon, it's like a traditional spiritual connection with the dragon, the heavenly dragon. Dragon, spiritually, they are protectors. It's like you devote to that divine being, the divine being will protect you.
Marysville in the 1890s was one of the larger Chinese communities, maybe up to 10,000.
They figured out rather quickly that the streets weren't paved in gold and you couldn't just walk out in the streets and pick up gold nuggets. And that's when they started looking for other types of work. The railroad head at that time was probably Oroville or somewhere in that area because they'd already come up from the Sacramento area. So they had to go through the Feather River Canyon, so they recruited the Chinese to go through there. 1882, the Exclusion Act was written. That was one of the very first immigration acts that the United States enacted. That literally was not repealed until 1943 during the Second World War with Japan. United States needed an ally, so what else? Ally with the United States, allowing the immigration.
After 1882, there were a lot of repression, racism against the Chinese because now it's legal to do so. The Chinese had no protection. In California, could not represent themselves in court. They could not be witnesses in court. So basically, not a Chinaman's chance. That's where it came from. When you don't have a right in court, you have no chance.
And as you go along, you see how these Chinese people were treated. They felt at the time undesirable and not worthy of coming to the United States by all the things that they did, and thinking, how hypocritical was that? Melting pot of the world suddenly becomes closed doors. And even after 1943, there were other things that continued. Discrimination. In 1966, when I was married, it was not, there was, I said 66. 50 years ago, when I was married, there was a lot of things even here that weren't accepted. Intermarriages were not. Probably one of the first ones here, but we actually went across to Nevada where it was a lot easier to get married here in California. Which is hard, it's 1966, you're thinking, how long ago was that act in the and how long was it repealed? So it's like, okay. But you learn, you know, as growing up, we learned tolerance. And a couple times that, you know, you reach out and voice your opinion. Not very wise at the time, but sometimes young person seeks out and says, take a picture, it lasts longer. That stops people from staring right away. So anyway.
Most of my Chinese American friends, they would say, see how racist this country was. I look at it very differently. I says, we shouldn't look at that. We should look at what the Chinese did to fight it. But the story of how the Chinese fought back is not told. The Chinese are incredibly proud of their culture for 5,000 years. Son of the dragon, descendants of the dragon, sons and grandchildren of the dragon. So as a symbol is incredible. The Chinese were trying to change their image as well. Whenever there were World's Fairs, they wanted to be part of it. The Chinese participated in a big way, the local community as well as the Chinese government, for image, saying we're really civilized, have a long history. There were a lot of violence against the Chinese, and they thought this was a way to counter it.
Some of the wiser members of the Chinese community felt that this is one way to show that, you know, Chinese are here and we're not all menial task laborers. We have other things. We brought our customs and our traditions here. And so it's kind of a way of showing, hey, you know, look at us as people. And so kind of an ambassador throughout the United States and showing that, you know, hey, look at this. We know of in the California, there's at least 7 or 8 different places that Mu has traveled. But it doesn't mean he's only there one time. He's traveled up and down the state of California. He was in Astoria. He was in Seattle, Washington, a number of places throughout the West Coast.
Dragon dancing's part of the tip of the iceberg of this desire of the Chinese to represent themselves. But if you think 1893, when they went to Chicago, Columbian World's Fair, this was quite an undertaking during segregation time. How you go get train tickets, where you're gonna eat, where you're gonna live. You're transporting maybe 100 people. I don't think I can do that today. To get 100 people to get off work, to travel for a few months before you can come back. And the logistics, you have to probably contact all the Chinese organizations in between Marysville and Chicago to put you up. If you have to stay, to feed yourself. Incredible task, but the Chinese were organized that way. They had organizations that were national, and they contacted each other. 1911, July 4th, they were in the parade in New York City, the parade of world countries.
In 1911, I kind of look at that as the Chinese community being, members of the Chinese community having a foresight that say, we need to send an ambassador to New York.
And they were written up as being the best unit in New York. And we know it was there for July 4th parade. The Dragon didn't get back until November, early November. So these people, you know, talk about logistics. This is a lot of resources to put up. So this was important for the Chinese overall image to take part in this, to let Americans know there's a long civilization, there's a history to it. And for me, it shows the organization that the Chinese had and always had to do something like this. It's just incredible. It blows my mind, actually.
They played an integral role in this whole country, but nowhere in our history books, unless you go to college and you take like an Asian studies or Asian American studies, you're not gonna know it. And then on some level too, I was like, well, how come growing up in this area and this being such an integral part of this area, I wasn't taught this in school at all. I didn't learn about any of this. I mean, we could have easily taken the trip to a Bakai temple, but we didn't. It is one of the oldest continuously held parades in California. Back in, I would say, mid-1800s, early 1900s, it was a way to celebrate the water god Bakai, because Marysville has a tendency to flood. And he would watch over Marysville to make sure it wouldn't flood and ruin everything. And in the parade, you had community members, and they would have pageants and competitions. And in fact, even my aunt was in one of the competitions, and I myself have held the title, and my cousins held the title. So it's been a long family lineage of hostesses. So the dragon is, it's probably the one thing that people come out to watch because, like I said, Marysville and Yuba City, currently there's not a huge Asian population, except this one time, this one day during the year in which this Chinese population and other people that come in to Marysville from, whether it be Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, we've had people from Hong Kong come in, and they come in to watch this parade because it's so old and it's like so original, and it has lion dancers and firecrackers, and the dragon is actually, now it's carried by the men and women of Beale Air Force Base.
69 or in that area when the military started helping us. Yeah, it was back that far. And without them, there would be no dragon in the parade. There are not enough Chinese in the city of Marysville to operate a dragon.
But they love the tradition, and they love what it stands for and how it represents a big part of Marysville and Yuba City's history.
You know, you have a number of different groups in the military. They go away with looking at, hey, I've learned something about the Chinese and their culture.
Chinese people are very proud of their culture. In the early 1900s, even late 1800s, they experienced a lot of racism. But at the same time, too, they never really hid who they were and what they believed in. And I think taking the dragon across the country to all of these different places in which it could be seen, to meet all of those people, to take it to different cities, I think it was a way to share their culture. And I think that even states what it is today. So there is a dignity that comes with the dragon and being a part of even the parade or anything like that. It does. It has a way of getting people to gravitate towards it, and something that evokes a certain pride in you. I mean, I remember when I was younger, listening to those drums, when I would hear those drums coming, I automatically, like, you sit up straight and you take notice. You pay attention. And I think it was almost like a little burst of pride because that's a part of my culture. That's who I am too. And I think that's anybody who either is doing the cymbals or the drums or holding a lion head or in the dragon itself. You have that burst of pride, and you have that special thing about you, and you feel like you're a part of something bigger. I mean, that's that one symbol that's traveled through time. And who doesn't want to be a part of a symbol that's traveled through time?
The dragon dance is not only catered to the Chinese, it's a multicultural event. It's for the whole community, not just one particular sector, especially in North America. The first dragon came into, and the city of Calvin was in the middle of 1965. And then the Next one, as I remember, is Master Wu from New York came in with his disciple in Calgary, and they form a dragon team.
You know, when Master Wu introduced that dragon to Calgary, it wasn't his dragon. This is part of a long tradition. It's something that has been around for thousands of years, right? And I think that's why everybody who does it, even though they're not Asian, or because we have all kinds of ethnicity on that dragon. In fact, we've all had comments about there's supposed to be a Chinese dragon. Well, it is a Chinese dragon, but it takes a team, and that team is the community of anyone at large who wants to embody and wants to hang on to part of that tradition.
Asian people look at it as an important event or special event with the color, with the atmosphere. The whole atmosphere brought it up. Not even the lion. The lion is, I mean, for the size, for the participation and everything, not as in the scale of a dragon dance. If you don't have a major event, you cannot even bring out the dragon. So it is something majestic and important that's going to take place.
But the real reason lion dance and dragon dance is to bring auspiciousness to the community, publicly asking the deities to come down and help with the celebration. And it's more a community celebration, this affirmation of organizing and affirmation about the goodness and good things that's happening, celebration of new occasions of opening of a temple, a business. They're usually for celebration.
Dragon dance, I think, is fairly unique amongst human symbolic lexicon, in that it is a symbol that people actually are able to interact with in a dynamic way. It's not just a picture on the wall or a statue somewhere that represents something. It is actually a moving, living symbol that is interacting with the community.
We celebrate 150 years of welcome today. And I love events like this because they remind me of our joint history for thousands of years.
The dragon was there. We were in the front of the parade. We were there and transcended any kind of, political parties or whatever, right? The mayor was there. The Premier Notley was there. The Premier of the province. Consul General from China was there, from the PRC. Different people come together to celebrate this 150-year celebration. And the dragon is there, once again, not just unifying ourselves in terms of what we do, but bringing the community together at large and acting as a thread to kind of, pull this whole thing together.
There is a renewed interest in the dragon, its symbolization. I think it's a lot of interest in people trying to figure out where they came from, and in doing so, they're figuring out where the people who have been here, where they actually came from, in which it's kind of like I have an interest in the Chinese culture, and I have an interest in my own culture. You have to know where you came from, but you'd like to know where your neighbor came from too, and what they brought to this country. And I think the dragon has helped a lot of people think about customs, other peoples, and learn to respect, learn to accept other cultures. And it's a beautiful beautiful thing to watch.
Because he helped so many people, so many sick people coming through that door. If you paid him, you didn't pay him. You know what I'm saying? If you gave him $1 or you gave him $20, he would do the best that he could to help you. And that counts a whole lot, you know? To me, that in itself was kung fu.
And he encouraged all of us to go to school and finish school. And, you know, I eventually went to school, even as a low-income poor Puerto Rican, went to Cornell, got my master's from Columbia, did some policy work at Harvard and Princeton, and a lot of that had to do with, you know, the profound impact that this man had on me.
I got the sense of, yo, you know, this guy is really out here to help people, and I believe that's why he lived so long.
Wonderful film. Rick, June, are you there? Great job, Rick, June. We're from all over the world. Esther is in Boston. I'm in San Francisco. Rick is in Calgary, and June is in Shanghai. So thanks to the Dragon, it brought us all together today for this event. Now, Rick, you made this film before the pandemic. And but now, when I look at it now, with all the anti-Asian racism around, this could be one of the solutions. You're really touch on part of the solution. But before I get to that, I want you to tell us how you. Why do you make this film? You're an outsider by looking at you, but you're really insider as a dragon dancer. So why do you tell us what got you started?
You know, and you know, thank you for that question. It's something I you know, I kind of reflected on it a lot, and I would say I would boil it down to this one thing: that in looking at and you know, getting involved in the Dragon and seeing this incredible, amazing, you know, cultural element and how it interacted with the American culture was truly impressive to me. Just as an example of how the Chinese were able to not only, you know, represent themselves, but embrace other people and bring them together. So I wanted to bring attention to this aspect of Chinese American cultural history that has not, that in some ways it was in danger of being trivialized because the Dragon has become such a cliche and largely ignored and in fact in danger of being forgotten. And I really wanted to capture this. And I just happened to be in this right spot in the right time. And I thought, I will start working on this. Originally, it started as a biography of Master Wu, but then very quickly realized that this thing was a much bigger project than just about him.
Yes, you could have just ended with talking about Master Wu. I thought that was good in itself. Your first half hour was about his work in Williamsburg, how he was able to bring different ethnicity together and gave everybody a place, a identity, allowed them to go out of just Williamsburg to go to Chinatown, travel to other places. You could have ended with that, but why do you continue?
Well, could I just bring attention to one thing, which I thought was, I came from Canada. I was going there to do postgraduate studies in New York with my wife, was doing her master's there as well. And what was amazing to me is Master Wu was in a ghetto, but he very quickly was able to cross formidable social barriers, ending up at the Met, at the opening of a very significant exhibit of Chinese art. It was actually the first project that was done with mainland China. The U.S. government was Astor Hall. That was the first major collaborative after Richard Nixon opened up political relations, and Master Wu was there with the dragon, and I thought that was incredible. It was so I realized it was more than just him. It was really the power of that cultural element. The way it was used was, and the way it embraced people. Again, that's the dragon. I mean, a dragon can't be used by a one-man person dragging it around. It was a group effort, and he was able to cross these bridge, basically this. The bridge, formidable social boundaries in New York. So it was more than just about him. It was something much bigger.
Okay. June, you're Chinese, but you are an outsider to dragons. And you were a recent immigrant to the United States. You're a filmmaker, both in New York and China. How do you get pulled into this project?
Well, but first of all, I wanted to thank you, Rick, to offering this opportunity for me to working on the film. It's such an honor, and I think as a younger guy, I don't know as much as on the matter as Rick did. But my reason of making this film is to finding the answers. I think I want to know more about our heritage, and being an Asian and Chinese, we all share something in common. It feels like it doesn't matter where we grew up and where part of the world we are living at this moment. We all share something like really special. We share the same liking of food, and we share the same parents who wanted us to be doctors, lawyers, making more money on the way, having a good life. But unfortunately, end up being an artist. And I think in our DNA, our default is being polite, being humble. Is really our thing. So although I'm not a native speaker, I'm not I don't know too much about culture in the States, in the West. But when you get close to somewhere you're familiar with, you really get this sense of, we are kind of same. So making this film make me appreciate more and understand what our mothers and fathers passed it down to us. I think that's the main reason why I helped Rick to make this film. Yeah.
Rick, is the dragon dance entertainment? Is it religion? Is it ceremony? What is it?
That's a very good question. It's a very complicated question because it's certainly at various times contextually, historically, has been all those things. But what I think it's evolved, particularly these more authentic traditions, they are essentially civic events that are an opportunity to bring the community together. I think that what is interesting about these kind of this particular, specifically about Dragon Dance, is that when people are there, they're not spectators any longer.
it has the power of turning them into participants. And that is, I think, one of the most remarkable things about the Dragon Dance. And in some ways, I think it's, I personally feel that one of the reasons we never put competitive dragon dancing in here, because in some ways, even though they're both dragons, they look the same, they're fundamentally a very different thing, and they're culturally not the same as what this is about. The Marysville Dragon, for example, this is not just entertainment. It's people feel included. It has this power to actually make people feel like they're participating in an event.
Thank you. And June, you shot the footage in China at Puzai. Tell us about that experience, because we almost never see anything like that in the States. When we think about Dragon Dance, we never think about the fire and all that. Tell us about that experience.
It is something difficult for using language to express. I thought it's something, you know, it's dragon. I have been seeing that like many times on TV. So I, you know, thought it cannot be so different. But when I get there, the people gathered, and the passion and just feel the energy you feel. It's just so different. It's not something you can express by language. And when the fire dragon, I was holding the camera right in front of the fire dragon. When it comes to us, you really feel the power and the energy of dragon as something. It is surreal, and the dancers who was holding the dragon, their expression, you can see on their faces, they feel extremely proud to be a part of this, and it is something you have to see in person to feel.
Yeah, you have to be there, like what Rick was saying, that even the spectator becomes part of the dragon ceremony. So it actually change you as a person doing this.
Yes, it pulls you in, and very naturally, and you enjoys the whole ceremony, and when the event is over, you look at the people around you. Everyone, I think, feels proud of themselves.
Yes. Rick, back to you. How long did it take for you to make this, and the research? It was deep research for especially the footage and the pictures. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, June and I we had a conversation about this a little while ago, and we have over 4,000 emails and Zoom calls. By the way, June shot some of the footage in New York as well, and he also shot some of the footage in Calgary, but that you saw. But anyway, it was a project that took us about what, June, 5-6 years.
Yes, on and off around 4 or 5 years. Yes, so because some of the events we have to wait. Such as the Puzai Fire Dragon, it only happens in Chinese New Year, once a year. So we have to wait for the opportunity and communicate with the local authorities for us to get in there and have take the footage.
So how about your research, Rick? Tell us about your research.
Well, I certainly looked at some of the earlier, we did a lot of academic research as well, like, the 1914, 1919, the Visor and Hayes Fong documents. So we did sort of a lot of that, but probably most of the research that we did was trying to find out the earliest dragon. I saw a news item, and I was kind of curious about, because we had no idea that the dragon had the Marysville Dragon was in New York. That was like a real shocker. And what made it a little bit different, and this is a little bit of a side thing, and it's just meant just to show you that it's not, that information is kind of hard to get. And I was trying to get early photographs in New York at the Chinese Museum in New York City. And I went there and they said, okay, we found some pictures of dragons from the 1930s. And so I flew to New York, took a look at it, and turned out they were confusing dragons with lions. So there was a lot of, the language and, people didn't really kind of understand the difference, surprisingly. And, which was some of the things that I found kind of interesting, and also kind of spurred me on to kind of doing more work. And I was very fortunate because the Marysville Dragon got to New York and we saw an article in the New York Times, and I immediately flew to California. I got a hold of, Rick. And then also things like, for example, we were doing research, for example, the artist that June shot, was working on a piece around that same time. So we immediately contacted him because we thought it was really pretty remarkable that he would be doing a dragon portrait in Chinatown, right in the very heart of Chinatown, which is, Dwyer Street. And so, yeah, so it was a kind of the process was not like we had a storyboard and we did a film. We basically, this is almost, the film itself is our journey in discovering the dragon in the US.
Thank you. I'm going to get back to Esther soon to have the audience questions. So I'll give each one of you a minute or two to tell us about your next project or whatever you want to say about this film. June, why don't you start?
Yeah, there was one thing I thought I should mention is that I really want to know more about Master Wu after this, after learning. It's a learning process. It's not really a making a film and show this film to everybody. It's for us ourselves. It's a learning. Just like Rick said, it's a journey of understanding. To me, what's happened before, what people before us, before me, did, and sharing culture. Was looking for how people around us can like us, and Master Wu did it, and many years ago. To me, that's an example I can learn from, and I do think this is something that can carry us through, overcome difficult times. Yeah, so if there's more time, I would like to know more about Master Wu and know more about the Dragon team members. Such a very interesting, joyful story, and very different. It's after watching the film, it's so different from editing screen to really watching the film as an audience. You feel joy after this. So I think that's all the difference there is.
Rick?
Well, I'll be very, very quick. Yeah, June and I, we have a collaborative effort where we've got a few other projects. We've already done a number of projects. They're sort of artistic projects, music videos and so forth, but we're also looking at doing another feature, but we got a couple of, possible things that we're developing that we're just not ready to share with anybody, but we are working on projects. We love the whole notion of collaborating on this scale, being a very agile, small group of people that are just, we're all passionate, but we live in different places. And the fact that we can actually pull a project like that together, we proved it to ourselves that we could do it. And we want to do a few more projects like this.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Go ahead, June. I'm going to get into the last word. Go ahead, June.
Yeah, Rick just reminded me, we started this collaboration process overseas, multiple places, even before the pandemic, even before the virus situation. So we were I think this is a great way to collaborate with people in different countries, in different places. It feels really efficient to, especially for people to want to tell stories. Yeah, that's what I want to say. Yeah.
Actually, I want to just express how happy I am to be part of this team and this film, that I did get to say a few words. But, you know, this phenomenon of dragon dance and groups of people coming together to do it is worldwide. You know, Canada, San Francisco, East Coast, many different countries, they have this. And it does bring people together. And I did my first dragon in 1965. I brought a group of friends together to do the dragon for the parade in San Francisco. And what I found, the uniqueness of this, especially applying to what we have today with the anti-Asian racism, people not getting along. And you look at this film, you say, here's some solution. And the real key is that sociologists and these cross-cultural psychologists have known this special feeling bonding of different groups is called contact hypothesis. So if you're in the audience and you want to find out the academic studies behind how people come together to have true integration, look up contact hypothesis. Esther, I'm going to throw it back to you.
So, I mean, it's really our privilege to have all three of you. So let's go to the Q&A. We have a long question here. The film certainly reminds us that many of the racial tension and problems of inner city crime stems from poverty and lack of social structural support for inner city youth. In the 60s and 70s, those who preyed on our communities were often our own young people. What can we learn from this film about inter-racist relations? What has changed? And how might we apply these lessons to productively address violence, crime, and racial tension today?
Rick, you wanna go ahead?
That's a very tough question. I can only speak for, I guess, from my limited experience, and I think I was in kind of a unique situation because I moved to New York and I lived in Manhattan actually. So I had no idea what was going on in the ghetto at that time and how violent it was and how dangerous it was. In fact, I myself was accosted at gunpoint because we had to go there. We had to be in practice at 4 o'clock in the morning. What was interesting about Shifu Wu was well, first of all, his bravery. And even though he had no resources, he went and put himself out. He went and went out in public, and the dragon allowed him to go right into the community. And I think the point that David made, and I have to do a little bit more research on the whole notion of direct contact on group activities, I think is incredibly important. And this is unfortunately the tragedy of where people are using the internet to communicate. I think in some ways, even before the pandemic, I think that there is something that is lacking in that human contact, which I think what I found in being involved in the dragon dance, it brings people together. It's a very physical thing, and in the proximity, that's like vital, I think. So anyway, that's probably the only thing I could really answer with, I guess, with confidence, is I think that is a very big element of it.
Well, I go back to that contact hypothesis, which basically say that you have to have equal status contacts towards a common goal. And that we find that in our sports teams to some degree, but that's very competitive. You can have different results, but in the arts, group performance arts especially, like line dancing, dragon dancing, where people come together as equals towards a common goal to put on a great performance, a ceremony. And and bring auspiciousness to the whole community. And you become seeing or brothers under martial arts, and you become very close and lifelong friends. At least that's my experience with working with people in the performance arts.
Okay. Junren, you have anything to add, or we should go to the next question?
I think I'm not too qualified out for this question.
Oh, you are way too humble. Okay, next question. Is the Dragon Club still active in New York?
Yes, it is. Of course, because of what's going on there right now, people couldn't get together for practicing. But yes, there is a team in New York City, and they have been up to the pandemic, being involved in. In fact, a lot of the footage was in the New York footage was fairly recent.
Okay, thank you. This is more like a comment. Maybe we need a national dragon dance project to dilute the hate against Asian Americans. You guys agree?
Yeah.
A good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can have Junren comes to Boston, maybe to help us to start one.
Fantastic.
Okay, and yep. Okay, next one. Will this film be available to be viewed again? Rick.
Yeah, it's gonna be available and on the website that you showed it tomorrow, which is Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Okay, yeah, so Rick was very generous. He already have the link, which is www.dragonmastersfilm.com. So it's the name of the film, Dragon Masters, and then at film.com, and it's going to be free viewing until Monday, May 17th, 5 p.m. Mountain Time, but 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Esther,
so if you guys want to watch it again, yeah.
Esther, can you send an email out to all the people who participated? Oh, it's already on there now.
I put it in the chat. I put the actual URL. So you just go to the URL, even right now, anytime you want, and you're going to be able to watch it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I'll be glad to, if any attendees email me, I'll definitely going to share it. I can email them as well. Okay, next, one more question. How long does it take to master enough skills to become a part of the Dragon Dance team? Are there different roles on the team?
Yes, that's a really good question, because people look at it and they think, oh, I could just grab it and do it. But they very, very quickly learn that it takes a lot of coordination, and the techniques of even shifting from hand to hand on the body, on the hand, is actually a skill. That's why it's very good. Anybody who's done martial arts and they have, for example, understand how to use a pole, a live pole in their hands, find it easier. But the part that's not in the film, which we took it out, is that there's a lot of specific technical parts to this. The dragon is not like a freeform jazz thing. There are very specific patterns, have symbolic meaning. The stepping, the different type of movements have names, and there are taboos, and there's certain, you got to learn how to enter with the dragon, how to leave with the dragon. It's a very, very complicated dance, so it takes a while. But with probably within, if somebody practices it within, a month of practicing, you can participate. But there is a lot. It's a lot more complicated than it necessarily appears when you're watching it. It looks like easy, and it's interesting how people say, "Oh, I could do it. Looks just like follow the leader, and you could just do it." But the moment you pick up this thing, all of a sudden, you have to cooperate. The whole team. It's like one organism. It's, even though there's individuals, you very quickly realize that you have to psychologically get into being a unit to make it come alive.
Teamwork it is, huh?
It is. It's work.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So let's see. How about just one more question? Is the dragon tail more difficult to perform than the dragon head?
No, the head is a little. There's more stuff that happens with the head, but the tail is definitely has its own movements, and there are times that the tail moves by itself. So, in some ways, the tail is used, particularly on certain moves. It becomes, in some ways, the controller of the body just by the very fact of how it moves. Like, for example, when the dragon is backing up, you can imagine you have the dragon is always an odd number. The smallest one is 7, which is a number. There's a certain reason for it. And then the 11 is the next important number. And but you imagine it's quite long. So to be able to know what's going on, and the tail's back, when it's backing up, the tail has to take over. So the tail is quite a complicated part. Yes, that's the short answer. Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it's 9:50, so let me just wrap this up with the last comment. And they said, film was so well done, so much information and history. Yay to Rick and Jun. So thank you for sharing the film with us. And thank you, David, for being such a wonderful moderator. And thank you for all the attendees. Appreciate you guys stay with us all the way for 1.5 hours. And hope that you're going to check out our website, www.cahf.us/AAPI Talks, TALAKS, for the rest of the webinars in May. So thank you again. Have a great night. Take care. Bye. And thank you to our guest again.